This segment sponsored by Viking Psychiatry. Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. As we know, ADHD is often misunderstood, but Viking Psychiatry, they're using new tools to better understand how the brain works. And owner Sean Goddard is here to explain it all. Hello, Sean. Good morning.
Good morning.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. Okay, so ADHD, people really think that that has to do with a child or someone being super hyper, maybe unfocused. Is that the proper definition of it?
Yeah, no, ADHD is not limited to just being hyper. A lot of times when I talk to my clients, I explain to them, if you break ADHD down to its core, ADHD is just about communication. You know, the areas of the brain not communicating and networking and connecting the way that they're supposed to, which drives a lot of the difficulties that we can see in ADHD, and it goes far beyond just being hyper.
Yeah, and it's like something that we often say, you know, kids show it, but adults show it a lot too. And I think the thing is, now that we're learning more information about it, it can be diagnosed more in adults. And it's not so much a shameful thing, right? We talk a lot about stigma here. It's just a matter of what's happening within our brains, and there are treatment options. And that's exciting. So what type of treatments can people take for ADHD?
Well, when it comes to treatments, there's various options, right? It comes from addressing it naturally through supplements and exercise, right? We look at non-stimulant medications. So these are medications outside of, you know, like your typical Adderall, Ritalin, and those types of things. But the gold standard is often a stimulant type medication to help really stimulate that prefrontal cortex so that it's waking up, and it acts as its role as the CEO of the brain and helps with that communication and management and kind of pulling everything together.
So is there just one test, or you have to take multiple to really drill down on it?
Yeah, so traditionally when it comes to testing for ADHD, typically you would reach out and go see a psychologist and go through psychological testing, and very, very great way to go through testing. But number one, very limited options exist in this community. There's extended wait times, and sometimes it can also be very limited to diagnoses when they do that test. And so what we do at Viking Psychiatry is we have a multi-part step.
Okay.
Not only do we do a full psychological history, psychiatric history and assessment, we use three main things. We use something called CRAOS, which is an individualized test, and that really is looking at like your memory, right, and the networks. Then we use another test called Total Brain, and the Total Brain is amazing because it really helps look at brain networks and activity, also emotional regulation and kind of that feedback response that can occur, because while we sometimes get weaknesses with ADHD, right, like overactivity, impulsivity, that type of stuff, we also get strengths that come with it. And they often can play against each other. And so this test really helps say, okay, yeah, you're super smart. Your brain works fast, but the problem is as you're trying to work fast and you make a mistake, then all of a sudden your brain slows down and focuses in on that mistake, right, and loses track and delays the process. And so this test really looks at you individually. And then the final thing we do is something called the AMEN questionnaires from Dr. AMEN. And these questionnaires look at individualizing, and looking at your subtype of ADHD, because we all know about like inattentive ADHD, right, which is what used to be known as ADD, and then there's hyperactive impulsive type, and then there's what's called combined type, right, and that's great, but that's kind of like a catch-all diagnosis in those areas. The subtype looks at you individually and how your ADHD presents. For example, young girls and women typically don't present as a very like hyperactive, bouncing off the couch type of situation. Typically, they often present like over worriers, overthinkers, and sometimes are often misdiagnosed as like OCD or severe anxiety disorders, when in fact, they have what often is referred to as an overfocus type of ADHD that leads to those ruminating thoughts and those overthinking, right, and those types of things. And so that subtyping really helps us determine not only do you have ADHD, but what type, so that we can guide our treatment specific to you, right? Not just oh, you have this type of ADHD, here's your stimulant, right? So it's a very unique process that we've developed there over time, designed to really get to the core of who you are, what you're struggling with, and how we can help you improve.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so what is the difference between ADD and ADHD? Because I think you make a good point that they're sometimes conflated. So how can we tell the difference?
Yeah, really, this is just people in higher positions making it complicated. So we used to know ADD is attention deficit disorder, right? And then ADHD was more that hyperactive, impulsive type. And then with the changes in like the DSM-5, they got rid of the diagnosis of ADD, and now it's called ADHD inattentive type, right? So technically ADD doesn't exist anymore when it comes to the core diagnosis. What it's now known as is ADHD inattentive type. So that means that's somebody that's struggling on the intention side, but not struggling on like the hyperactive, impulsive side, right? And so those tend to be the people that are a little bit quieter, that don't present as the class clown and interrupter and can't sit in their seat and that type of stuff, right? Instead, they're the ones when they're trying to do their test, right? They see something out the window and then they're focused out the window and right, and then they're trying to do their next question and somebody makes a sound and so then they're looking at that and before they know it, the test is over and they've only answered 30% of their test, right? And so then there's that hyperactive attentive side or impulsive side, right, which is that more traditional often presentation we get. And then they have what's called combined type, which is a combination of those two, right, where not only is our hyperactive impulsive side leading to inattention, but we just have a severe inattentive issue, right? And those combine and create a confluence of difficulties for people.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point before about there being weaknesses and strengths, because a lot of times the weaknesses are what's highlighted. It's like having this is a problem, but you bringing up strengths can give people encouragement, just because it's something that they want to treat and be better at, but it's also like you're not broken. So can you highlight on some of the strengths that someone may see within this that could be identifiers that they need to get tested?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I could use myself as an example, right? Because I have ADHD, and for a long time I struggled because it was improperly managed. And so one of the things that I tend to be is I have a creative brain, right, and a creative mind. But what I say that often goes along with creativity in ADHD is impulsivity, right? So if you have a creative mind, right, ooh, I could do this, right? And so you impulsively do it. But then you have another creative idea, right? And so before you know it, you're doing that. And then that first thing is kind of left half done. And so for me, one of the things I struggled with was that having that creative mind and having all these ideas of things that I wanted to do and but never actually getting a lot of those things done because I was constantly impulsively moving on to the next thing and the next great idea, right? And so once my ADHD was looked at and I was able to say, okay, this is what's going on with me, and this is how I individually treat my ADHD. Well, now my impulsivity is down, but the key is to not take away that creativity as you treat it. And when people mistreat or overtreat ADHD to try to get rid of that impulsivity, they can get rid of that creativity at the same time and suppress it. And so we look to find that balance of finding what's unique about you and your strengths and strengthening those even more while reducing the things like your impulsivity that can lead to roadblocks or never getting ahead. I know if my ADHD was never correctly treated, I wouldn't be sitting with you here today, right? Because I was constantly bouncing and bouncing. So that's just a core example.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff, because I'm sure so many people are identifying themselves in everything that you're saying, because I think that it's not talked about enough.
Absolutely.
And so what ages can participate in this testing that you offer?
Yeah, so right now we're doing ages 13 and above, and this includes adults, because we do find that there are a lot of adults out there who have ADHD who weren't appropriately diagnosed when they were growing up, especially very core to what we've been doing. A very significant portion of my practice have been women and girls who weren't diagnosed or were misdiagnosed as having like OCD or ADHD, but we treat ages 13 and above at this time, assess 13 and above. Our intention is to expand that eventually, but our core focus has been catching those people who weren't caught in those 6 to 12 years of age and really help those people, especially high schoolers, because it's the earlier you catch it and start treating it, the less chances for long-term complications and for issues down the road with mental health, such as depression, anxiety, those types of things. The studies show us the sooner we catch it, the sooner we treat it, the better off they are. Their brains are still developing, right? So we can cause change that becomes permanent and affects them for their whole life. And for those adults, it's not too late, right?
Yeah.
You know, I just was sitting with, I think she was 57 years old the other day, and sure enough, her whole life she'd been a struggle, going from job to job, career to career, struggling with money, struggling with all these different things, right? And when it all came down to it, she had undiagnosed ADHD, and she was never diagnosed because it wasn't talked about in her family, right? Girls didn't get it when she was growing up. It was a boys thing, and even if you had it, you didn't treat it. They just grow out of it, right? And so she's already started treatment, and I mean, she was crying on my couch about the difference already in her brain and feeling calm and finally not hearing 100 things going on at a time. And so she's somebody that I'm very excited about to see what that future looks like for her.
That is awesome. You're right. People don't talk about it, but we're talking about it here.
That's right.
So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for helping.
And if you or your teen may be dealing with ADHD, well, Viking Psychiatry offers a variety of testing. All you have to do is contact them so they can give you the proper answers. We'll have their website listed below, and I'll see you after the break. This segment sponsored by Viking Psychiatry.